All right, jurors in the Colorado movie theater shooting trial have endured 47 days in court, over 2.5 months, but it is day 48 tomorrow, and that will be so crucial for them. That's when closing arguments will begin, and then deliberations. A guilty verdict for James Holmes would mean the start of another long phase of this trial, and the same jury would also decide whether he will live or die. Holmes pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity. Ultimately, he chose not to testify, but the jury still heard plenty from him. The prosecution presented 22 hours of videotaped interviews with a court-appointed psychiatrist, recorded 2 years after Holmes shot and killed 12 people and injured 70 more on July 20th, 2012.
Any doubt that you would end up killing a lot of people?
No, the dead can't be repaired or come back to life or be normal again. So it's kind of irreversible.
What about the wound?
They're like collateral damage, I guess.
All right, Ana Cabrera has been following this. She joins me now from Denver. Ana.
Hey there, Fred. Today is just a day to prepare for those closing arguments. Tomorrow we know that the jurors are not in court, but the lawyers and the judge are going over the jury's instructions, trying to make some tweaks to the wording to clarify or simplify the legal morass, as the jurors are going to take up some 165 counts and determine ultimately whether Holmes is guilty or not guilty by reason of insanity. Now, tomorrow, as you mentioned, is the closing arguments, and we now know that each side, the defense and the prosecution, will get 2 hours apiece to make their argument, to leave that lasting impression on the jurors, who will head into deliberations first thing Wednesday morning. That is the latest word. And they're considering first-degree murder, attempted murder, as well as an explosives charge. And they could perhaps also consider lesser charges, including second-degree murder and manslaughter, Fred.
And how is it that the defense went about trying to prove that Holmes was insane at the time?
Well, remember, here in Colorado, it is the prosecution's burden to prove Holmes was sane at the time of the shooting, but the defense did just wrap up its side of the case just last week, and they did present 2 mental health experts whom they had asked to do mental evaluations of Holmes, and who told the jurors they believed he was insane at the time of the crime. One of those experts was a specialist in schizophrenia, and she was last to take the stand for the defense and talked about how Holmes was suffering from a delusional system, she said, that really made him believe he had to carry out a mission to kill to increase his own self-worth. She said he was detached from reality. He really didn't have control of his actions and was unable to understand morally what was right from wrong. The defense also put together a string of videos showing Holmes in jail after he had been arrested, in which he acted in a very bizarre manner. In one video, he was standing on a bunk bed, fell backwards a couple of times. In another video, he's lying naked in his cell, spreading feces on the walls. And they emphasized that he was taken to the hospital for a psychotic break in November of 2012, so about 4 months after the shooting. Proof, the defense argued, that Holmes has a severe mental illness. Fred.
All right, Ana Cabrera, thank you so much. Appreciate that. Well, so for the legal view, let's bring in now HLN legal analyst and defense attorney Joey Jackson and criminal defense attorney Philip Holloway. Good to see both of you guys.
Hi, Frederica.
We should be in the same room. We're going to have to make arrangements next time.
It's always nice.
I know. All right. So, Joey, to you first, especially since Anna was talking about this video that helps substantiate that he was acting very strangely in his cell, but that doesn't necessarily speak to being insane, does it? How did his defense try to prove that he was insane?
Sure. It's a great question, because we have to remember that the critical issue, Frederica, is at the time of the offense. So you can point me to videos that show that I'm knocking my head against a wall in a jail cell, I'm falling backwards, another where I'm spreading feces and I'm engaged in all other types of behavior. But what the defense needs to do is to point it and focus on the critical issue at hand, and that is when he engaged in the carnage that he did, when he killed 12 people, when he injured 70, many of whom will never walk again and whose lives have been altered. How was he there? And what they did in doing that was the defense brought in 2 psychiatrists to suggest to that jury, and not only to suggest but say outright, that he was mentally insane. Not only mentally ill, as we know that meaning to be, but that he was insane. Of course, Frederica, that was, I shouldn't say rebuffed, because the prosecution first put on 2 witnesses that said, experts that said that he was sane. However, the defense, no surprise, put 2 experts of their own that said, you know what, he absolutely did not know what he was doing. He could not distinguish right from wrong. They'll be relying upon that very clearly in their closing arguments tomorrow.
Interesting. So, Philip, it really is a battle of the experts, isn't it? Because both sides presenting their experts, either he's mentally insane, mentally unstable, but in the end, jurors have to go with believability of these experts. How do they do that?
Well, they're going to obviously listen very carefully to the words of each expert, but one thing that they're going to also do, in addition to listening to those experts, they have the actual words of James Holmes with them in the jury room. Even though he did not testify, Fred, he said in State's Exhibit 1128 that his mind was broke and he tried to fix it, but essentially that he couldn't. And what that shows is that he knew right from wrong at the time that he committed this offense. In fact, this same State's Exhibit, which is a detailed plan of how he wanted to go about conducting this attack and this mass murder, he mailed it to his treating psychiatrist the same day of the shootings, and he admitted that he tried to keep this from his psychiatrist. That shows a consciousness of guilt, someone who knows that what they've done is wrong, and that's why I think that at the end of the day, the jury will convict him of murder.
Frederica, I agree and disagree, and here's why. And certainly Philip points to what he has. You could call it a manifesto, you could call it a document, but it's very important that we not cherry pick certain aspects. In the same document that Phillips talks to that speaks to his premeditation, where he plots out, I'm not going to do this at an airport, I'd rather do it at a movie theater. You know, he even puts out an estimated time of arrival. It'll take 3 minutes for the police to get there. But there are also musings and ramblings and pages where he's saying why, and what's the meaning of life. And so clearly,
so what is it when you have both? If you have real clarity on trying to determine, you know, what's wrong, but at the same time you have those musings, I mean, how does it come down to your mental state at the time of the crime?
And it's interesting, Frederick, because there it is. It says why, and you know, I think that what'll happen is jurors are going to be, each side is going to persuade them, right? The prosecution, he planned it, he premeditated it, he showed up, and he had full body armor, he had a helmet, he had a neck guard, he had leg protectors, he knew what was going, he booby-trapped the apartment. But then the defense will make the argument he was in a psychosis. Clearly, if you look at this document that he has, he's not well. And how do we know he's not well? Because 2 psychiatrists looked you in the eye, jurors, and they told you so. And if you look at that and his family history of medical issues and mental issues and his own histories, you will have no choice, ladies and gentlemen, but to declare that he's insane. That's what the defense will say. As to whether the jurors believe it, well, Phil, I guess that's another story.
Yeah, but they also have some state psychiatrists who said that, in fact, very clearly, he did know right from wrong at the time. And if you take all of that together, Fred, I think at the end of the day, when you combine that with everything the jury has seen in this courtroom, along with what's in this document, I think that they will conclude that he did know right from wrong at the time he committed this terrible, terrible, senseless act.
I do agree with that. I believe he will be found guilty, notwithstanding the mental health issues and the testimony that have gone on. Too much planning, preparation.
Absolutely.
Very difficult for the defense to overcome.
All right, again, closing arguments tomorrow. Joey Jackson, Philip Holloway, thanks so much.
Have a great day, Frederica.
All right, thanks so much. All right, next, the breaking news out of the White House. President Obama commutes the sentences of more than 40, mostly drug offenders. We'll go live to Washington next.